a bill to amend the Waqf Act has been introduced. Now we'll see why this is being done, what are the issues that is being faced, what is in fact the Waqf Act, why was it required, what does it do, what is Waqf, what is happening, and why the need for new amendment, and what these amendments will be like, or in what domain, what field, what will they be trying to change. We'll have a look at all of these things. So let's get started. First things first, of course, its Waqf amendment is in news because Parliament is set to introduce the Waqf amendment bill. In fact, whatever they have proposed has already been given to the parliamentarians, and already a lot of criticism has also started floating. So now the criticism would be there, the government would respond to it, all these discussion is now going to happen. Alright. So what is it trying to do? What is this amendment is trying to do? It is basically trying to reduce the power of the Waqf board which is there to make decision with respect to the properties, whether they belong to the Waqf or not. Right. So what do we mean by that? See, any property which is there, the Waqf has the authority to declare it as a Waqf property. Now this power to declare any property as Waqf's property or as a Waqf has been seen to be misused, meaning any property left, right, center without any proper basis is being declared as Waqf property. This is not just what the government is saying, but also the courts have said that. So much so that it has come to a position wherein, okay, if that is the case, tomorrow you will say this Taj Mahal is also Waqf property, right? So you can't do that. So it has been noticed not just by the government, but also by the courts that there is too much of power in denoting any property as Waqf property, and that is being done you can say indiscriminately without any proper basis, and this needs to be controlled. There needs to be a proper necessary check, because right now this is being done without proper check. Okay? So currently they are declaring any property as Waqf without any proper necessary check. So this power needs to be reduced and there needs to be proper checks which is there. Now what is Waqf? See, Waqf is basically a charitable organization for religious purposes. So when you declare a property to be Waqf property, you are declaring this property to be the property of God. And since we are talking about this Waqf is for the Muslim minority, so this is for the religion of Islam. That is why here when we talk about God, we are saying the property of Allah, right? So what happens now? If a property is declared as a Waqf property, it is declared to be the property of Allah, meaning it would be used for religious purposes of the religion of Islam. For example, creating mosque, creating madrasa, all these things would be done on that property, and this would be considered to be irrevocable. Irrevocable means, for example, if I have a property, I donate this property to the Waqf Board of India, and they then declare, see, there are ways to declare it. If someone donates it also, you can declare it, and that is fine. I am donating, so clearly I am transferring the ownership to the Waqf, fine. What they were doing is some other properties there whose let's say owner and all is in dispute or something is there, so they would relate it to some let's say a Muslim person who might have donated, so let us declare this also Waqf. That is what was happening. So even that is what was happening, but there are other ways. For example, I donate some land to the Waqf, so that land would be declared as a Waqf land. Now that land would be utilized for religious purposes, and I cannot claim it back. 2 years later, I can't ask them to give it back to me. So once a Waqf property, if I have donated, it remains like that. Okay. So now what is the issue in that? If I'm donating my own property, that's fine, but there are certain properties whose ownership is debated, whose ownership is not clear. So creating a link of that and then declaring that waqf property is an issue which we are facing. So I hope the concept of waqf is clear, right? Now the person who donates is a donor. So that donor is called as waqif. That donor is called as waqif, W-A-Q-I-F. You should know this term. Sometimes they ask in UPSC, what does this term mean? So the donor, if I am the donor donating my property to the waqf, I am known as waqif, and I will not directly donate it to the waqf. There, the waqf will have a trustee, and this trustee is known as mutawallit. Mutawallit is the trustee through which I will donate the property, and I am the waqif. Now what is the Waqf Act? We need to understand. Of course, it was brought in initially in 1954. Later on it was scrapped. After scrapping it, it was again later brought in 1995, and this 1995 one gave more powers to the Waqf boards. Okay. Now, in 2013, there were further amendment which granted the waqf extensive power to designate property as waqf property. So, in 1954 it came, then it was abolished, then in 1995 again it came, it got the power of designating the property as a waqf property. In 2013, again the power was further extended. So now we need to take that back, reduce that back, in the sense that at least proper checks and balance needs to be there. You cannot give an overriding property. So what are the key amendments that the government is talking about? First thing is transparency. It's the basic. Anything you are trying to do has to be transparent, right? So around 40 amendments are there. They would be cornered about being transparent also, and various other things. Among other things is gender diversity. What gender diversity are we talking about? So in Waqf there would be Waqf board. So on the Waqf board they are proposing that women representation should be there. Women representation has to be there. So there might be compulsory, when the guidelines, when the rules come, there would be compulsory requirement of women to be represented on the Waqf board. So that is a very important thing. Now, very interesting thing to understand here is the criticism. What kind of criticism can come? For example, if there are 10 members and if you are making it compulsory, coming up with reservation and stuff, so you may not give 50-50, but for example, let's say the government comes up with 50-50, that 5 women and 5 men, and each person will have a single vote, 1 vote. Now there is a problem here. Problem as in, we are not saying it is wrong, but it will be in conflict to the concept of the religious followers or the religion what it follows. Why I am saying this is because generally what happens is the testimony, when you are talking about the testimony, the taking decision on the Waqf board is not same as testimony, but just there can be a conflict, because when you come to testimony, testimony is what? If I am doing something and someone has seen me, a few people have seen me, and I am in court and someone is giving testimony in my favor or against me, then as per the religious rules, what happens is the testimony of one man actually, the testimony of one man is equal to the testimony of 2 women, right? So here that could be a problem, because it is in direct conflict. The legal thing would become directly in conflict with the religious thing. Anyway, that remains to be seen, that when we are talking about gender diversity, to have gender diversity, reservation, or in whatever way we do it, we have to see what is the proportion they are talking about. So of course criticisms are going to follow. Now other things is revised verification procedures, right? So verification also needs to be done, because if there are any disputes, there is a dispute between X, Y and Waqf. You know, Waqf board simply declares it as Waqf. Should not happen like that. Proper verification has to be there. Waqf may say it is Y and Y have donated it to us, so it becomes Waqf property. But it is possible that it is X's property. There is a dispute going on. Understand? There is a dispute going on between X and Y. Y is saying that no, it's my, I give it to Waqf. So without waiting for the result, without verifying, you are just assuming yes, it's Y and it is Waqf property. That is again not the right thing to do. And then limited power, right? So Waqf board's power is being unchecked, so that needs to be limited or restricted. So these are the key amendments that we are looking for. Now, what is the criticism? See, since the power would be restricted, the first criticism would be that there is too much of interference, there is no freedom of religion, all these problems will come. So, of course, this can be a criticism, but then the problem is those powers were unchecked. So, shouldn't it be kept under check? Of course, yes. So, is it actually harming the freedom of religion, or is it ensuring that just decisions are made? That is very important. Okay. So, the criticism is reduced powers. People are criticizing that it is limiting the authority of the Waqf board. Now, limiting the authority may need not necessarily be the case, because the Waqf can still declare a property as a Waqf property. All this is asking is to have certain checks, have proper representation, have verification. So if this is called as limiting, then maybe this is not the right term to be used, that it is not limiting, it is just keeping things transparent. Okay, it is keeping things transparent. It is asking for verification. It is keeping under check the ever expanding power which is being under check. Everything needs to be kept under check. The parliament is kept under check by the judiciary. Judiciary kept under check by the parliament. So we have the system of checks and balances. Constitution keeps under check both the judiciary and parliament. So that's how checks and balances work. If we give limitless power to any one, let's say either the judiciary or the parliament, so it would of course not be in the right direction. So minority rights concerns, so that minorities' rights are being reduced, right? That is so what happens is when you give a lot of power, and then when things become better, or you want ki now let's reduce the power because now things are well, so people would not be ready to give away the power. That's point number one. Point number two, if you have given all power and it is going unchecked, and when you start checking it again, that would be taken as criticism. So instead of just saying that this is criticism, we need to analyze how the rules and guidelines and what are the specificities of it, and then understand whether it is reduction in rights or not. Increase government control, because now whatever decision verification happens, that is going to come under the control of the district magistrate, and district magistrate would also be involved, and district magistrate is nothing but, you can say, an employee of the government. So let's say that is why increased government control, or the criticism is the encroachment of the government in the religious matter. Hampers freedom of religion. The involvement of district magistrate and other government officials, right? It will hamper the religious freedom is what is being said over here. Encroachment on religious autonomy. So in answer, when you are writing, if there are certain negatives or criticism which has to be mentioned, you can write these criticisms and then counter it why they are or why they are not criticisms. That can be countered. But yes, whenever you are writing, be it any paper, so when you are writing the positives, write the positives even though there are some issues in it. When you are writing the negatives, write them even though you can address them immediately, or even though there would be a flip side to it. Okay? Potential disputes. Now, new verification process will involve district magistrates. It may create disputes and complications. Why? Because DM would say something, Waqf board will say something. So what has happened? Dispute. Right? But then But then, that is how check and balance work. Parliament comes up with some law, judiciary declares it null and void. Parliament comes up with an amendment to the constitution to ensure that the law is kept. So this tussle keeps on happening, and of course at times this tussle can lead to a deadlock, but otherwise, so that can be an issue, and then the common sense should prevail. But apart from that, this tussle, this check and balance is very much necessary. Imagine you being allowed to do whatever you want and there is no check. So absolute power would be an issue, of course, right? So yeah, now I think this was the last slide. These are repetition. So finally, potential dispute can be there because the DM and Waqf would be involved. So now it remains to be seen what the specificities are there. So as and when these specificities comes out and Parliament debate and everything is going to take place, it should happen. But again, whatever is the most logical thing is that no power should be left unchecked. So there needs to be a check and balance. It should not be such that it reduces or finishes the entire freedom. So there needs to be a proper balance between giving the right, giving the freedom, at the same time regulating it and keeping it under check. Thank you.